What up, what up? Mully is back with the final episode of Diamonds Are Forever for 2016. I'll be taking another break to spend time with family for Christmas here in the States, so there will be no uploads next weekend once again. I do have an upload planned for December 31st, but it will not be a Pokemon battle and will in fact be something else. Most likely Eternal, which for those that don't know, is a card game from Direwolf Digital that went into open beta a few weeks ago. And I've been having a ton of fun with that game too. More so than Hearthstone. Even with the new set that came out recently in Hearthstone. Again, those of you who watched my last channel update knew this was coming, but I want to let those that didn't see it know what's going on. But anyways, today we have a match against ConGee. Let's get into it. I lead off with Skarmory and ConGee has a lead Hippowdon, so I'm immediately thinking this is stall v stall. I could taunt off the bat to prevent Stealth Rock, but I go ahead and spike up since my team doesn't mind Stealth Rock that much. ConGee switches to Heatran expecting the taunt. I have to switch out here, so I immediately go to my own Heatran because this is my only real switch to it, and this matchup has to happen sooner or later. Flamethrower is the play from my opponent, and at the risk of catching an Earth Power, I set up Stealth Rock so that way I can focus on other things for the rest of the game with 2 hazards out. I am running specially defensive Heatran, which does survive Earth Power from other bulky Heatrans, so the risk isn't super huge. But a rotom-h actually comes into play here, which is a bit surprising. This would normally prompt an initial switch on my part, but the problem is sand damage doesn't tell lies. And this rotom has leftovers and not a choice item, so I don't have to worry about Trick. I go ahead and roar because of this to scout the moveset. Shadow Ball gets revealed and Heatran takes nothing. Unfortunately, Heatran shows her face again, so I decide to go ahead and protect to scout for the Earth Power, and I was able to confirm it. Hippowdon is going to come back in here, and I decide to go to Cresselia, despite her not being able to touch Heatran. My plan was to only get Flame Orb activated on a possible Earth Power, and then switch out back to Heatran at worst case scenario. My Heatran gets KO'd on the predicted switch, and I can trap ConGee's with Dugtrio. Note that my opponent's switch out happened first, which means that my Heatran is the slower one, pro tip. Anyway, this couldn't have gone better for me, so I go ahead and cycle shift now. Again, not minding if the sneaky pebbles get set up, and they indeed do, and I get the Hippo burnt. I decide to stay in here and Psychic because it's very likely that Hippowdon can't touch Cresselia since Earthquake is usually the only move they carry, and Crunch wouldn't even do much, and is also pretty rare. Roar ends up being the play from the opposing side, which basically confirms there's no coverage move, as the last move is always Slack Off. Skarmory gets dragged in, which is amazing for me since the rest of my team stays hidden, and I get another free layer of spikes. So I take advantage of the situation, and ConGee switches back to Rotom to force me out. I oblige and go back to Heatran, which is my best switch for Rotom, and my opponent goes straight for the overheat here, maybe to either catch another switch or hoping I would either stay in and get greedy with hazards. But I had no reason to, and I get another Flash Fire boost. It's here that my opponent decides to reveal the third move on this Rotom, Pain Split. With that info though, I am putting my opponent on a substitute Pain Split set, and if I'm right, that reveals the fourth move as well. So I went for Roar fully expecting Heatran to come back in, and Skarmory gets dragged in, so the phasing is still going in my favor overall. And seeing that ConGee did not switch into Heatran last turn, and that Skarmory's not staying in this turn, I decided to just go for it and click Lava Plume. Sure enough, Hippowdon actually comes back in and ends up getting knocked out between the hazards and the special attack boost. The score is 6-5, but I'm pretty far ahead right now until ConGee revealed this Empoleon. That's when I knew this was actually a semi-stall team. Sub-agility Empoleon is extremely dangerous for this team, and I have a very specific protocol that I need to follow to deal with it. I go to Celebi right away on the expected agility. Empoleon is the biggest reason I run the Perish Song set, and I go for it immediately here, as I don't want to get swept this early by this thing. And the substitute does get shown here. Now, the plan is to never actually break the sub, because I can't let this thing get into Pataya Berry range, so I'm just going to spam Recover until there is only one turn left on the Perish Song, and then U-turn out. Surf does come my way. The crit is inconsequential because of the Recover, and ConGee is going to quickly realize what's up though, and that this is not going to work out, and switches back to Skarmory. But I stick with the plan and just recover up. Since this is the last turn of Perish Song coming up, I'm forced to switch out or get knocked out. So I'm going to go ahead and U-turn back to Heatran since I don't have a spinner on this team. And my opponent is going to take the opportunity to actually spike up here. Now, I'm still thinking that Heatran is going to come in at any moment from the opposing side. So I decide to roar again, since it's pretty effective now with 2 layers of spikes and rocks down on my opponent's side of the field. My opponent again goes back to Rotom though, and the final team member is actually going to get dragged in here, which turns out to be a Scizor. Now Scizor getting revealed confirms that ConGee doesn't have a spinner either, so my hazards are here to stay. Regardless, I can't just throw off a Lava Plume here, and I need to scout the set, so I protect, and Rotom ends up coming back in again. Now, Rotom has come into Heatran 3 times this game, which means that ConGee is just as scared of my Heatran as I am of his. In hindsight, it kind of makes sense, especially since Hippowdon is gone, and Empoleon isn't exactly a good switch in. Realizing that Rotom will stay in, I just click Lava Plume, and Pain Split ends up being the play. Now, I'm going to switch back to Roar though, hoping my opponent would switch up, and risk the Heatran switch. And I also wanted to minimize the value that a potential Pain Split would get later if I just kept attacking. I eat a Shadow Ball as payment, and Empoleon gets pulled back in. And once again, this is the biggest threat to my team, maybe bigger than Heatran, and I have to play around it correctly or I'll get blown out. So I go back to Celebi, and ConGee is going to go for the Surf, which kind of confirms that he really is scared of my Heatran. So I'm going to go right for Perish Song again. And Agility will get set up, which looks crazy, but if you think about it, ConGee really isn't going to get another chance to sweep with Empoleon now that Celebi is in to limit the amount of turns he can stay in. So it's best to get whatever value out of it now. This time things are a bit more dangerous because the hazards put Empoleon into Torrent and Pataya Berry range after a sub, and so ConGee's going to go for the sub here, of course. But I stick with the protocol and recover up. Now I just need to dodge Ice Beam, and if I want Celebi to stay alive, the attack turned out to be Surf, so that confirms that the last move's Grass Knot, but Surf did 45% to a Celebi. Granted, it's not especially defensive, but it still has max HP invested, which is ridiculous. So since Celebi is slower than Empoleon now, and it can't be O-Code, I go ahead and U-turn out on the Surf on the final Perish Song turn and go back to Heatran after seeing Empoleon stay in, and the arguably biggest threat to my team is gone. The other biggest threat though, Heatran, is finally going to come back in here. Now I go for Protect just to get a bit more leftovers recovery, and I'm fully expecting Earth Power, which is indeed the play here. Now notice that this Heatran is not carrying leftovers, so Shuka Berry is a possibility. It's at this point though that the opposing Heatran is low enough to where a Choice Band Stab Earthquake from Dugtrio would knock this thing out through Shuka Berry. Now I just need to choose something to sack. I decide that I don't need Skarmory anymore, as Heatran is just as good against Scizor as long as I'm careful, so I make the switch into the Earth Power. And here I just click Spikes, fully expecting to be knocked out by Flamethrower, but ConGee actually switched to his own Skarmory, likely expecting me to switch to Cresselia. And this is where showing Taunt is going to lock the game up, because now that I have a full stack of hazards on ConGee's side, his team is just going to be taking too much damage, switching in, and this Skarm can't do anything to mine, so he forfeits. And there you go. The last battle of 2016 has come to a close. I originally was just going to keep doing these early next year, but I think I want to switch things up. I'd rather bring you guys more current DPP OU matches than keep narrating and uploading ones that I had back in 2013, but we'll see. Anyway, hope you guys still enjoyed. If you guys like what you saw, hit the like button just below the video. If you didn't like it, then hit the dislike button, but let me know in the comments as to why. And if you don't want to miss future stuff coming down the pipe, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Links to all the social clubs I hang out at are in the description box below. And stay tuned for more. And until then, Mulligan is out. To those who celebrate it, have a very Merry Christmas, and you guys take care. Peace.